Hello, everyone. This talk is intended to be a supplement to your reading of the Odyssey. I'm sorry that it's late. I should have been up yesterday, but Mercury is retrograde, and that's kind of par for the course for the next few weeks. Mercury is one of the deities that I'll be talking about today, and so it's kind of appropriate that we start with that kind of interruption from the trickster deity. But let's get into it. Greek mythology, it is a series of stories, and it's important to know at least a little bit about Greek mythology to enhance your understanding of the Odyssey. Greek mythology itself encompasses a collection of ancient stories about gods and goddesses that I call deities, heroes, fantastical creatures, and other beings that are not exactly human, like nymphs. And so they're considered gods, but they're not the Olympians. The myths played a significant role in shaping Greek culture and literature. The origin stories of Greek come from these myths, and the tales that the Greeks knew and assumed as they listened to this sung poem, the Odyssey, is an interweaving of different stories and interrelations between gods and humans that enhance the story. And if you have a little bit of a background and understanding, you'll get more of what's going on in the Odyssey itself. Okay, so the key deities, the Olympians, the 12 Olympians, are the ones that you'll be hearing about in the Odyssey, the ones that were best known throughout Greece, adopted by the Romans, including Zeus, who is not the oldest of the gods, but who is considered the king of the gods. He rules over the sky. He's often seen with a thunderbolt because he's considered the god of thunder. He's a lightning bolt, actually, but he's considered the god of thunder. Poseidon, his brother, ruled over the oceans and was in charge of earthquakes. Athena, who is Odysseus's patron god, if you will, is the goddess of warfare and wisdom. Different from the god of war, Ares, also known as Mars, Athena is the one who strategizes in warfare, who tries to avoid conflicts when conflicts aren't necessary, doesn't go in like a bull in a china shop. Um, Hera, the queen of the gods, married to Zeus, mother of Hephaestus, and also with Zeus, mother of Athena, Apollo, Artemis, Dionysus, Hermes, and Aphrodite, the second generation of the Olympians, is the deity of marriage and family. Apollo is the deity of music and poetry and prophecy. Artemis, Apollo's twin sister, is the deity of the hunt, um, and the protector of wildlife, interestingly. So these are the main deities. There are others that you will come across, but each one is in charge of a certain part of the natural world. And when you look up at the sky and you see the constellations and you think about the names of some of our planets, they're named for these deities. And the skyscape of the constellations tell the same types of stories as the Greek myths that are assumed in the telling of the Odyssey. The prequel to the Odyssey is the Trojan War. The Trojan War was a 10-year war. It brought the Greeks to Troy. They went to Troy because Paris had stolen, if you will, Helen of Troy, who originally was of Sparta, and the king of Sparta wanted her back. Helen herself was a demigod. A demigod is someone who is the product of the mating of a deity and a human. You should note that when a human looks directly at a god, they spontaneously combust. And that's a problem for someone like Athena, who loves Odysseus, but who can't really show herself to Odysseus in her full form because he'll spontaneously combust. So you often read that Athena is appearing in fog. When fog rolls in, that's Athena when it involves Odysseus. So Helen of Troy, originally of Sparta, is the daughter of a human and Zeus. Zeus is a philanderer. He mates with a lot of different humans, gods, and other things. And Helen was the most beautiful woman in the world because she was half god. Another demigod was Hercules, also known as Heracles, because he was also the son of Zeus and a human. He was named Heracles to appease Hera, who was being cheated on by Zeus right and left. Hera had nothing to do with it and wanted to kill him, but he was a demigod, so that was very hard to do. Back to Helen of Troy, there is a story called the Judgment of Paris, and Paris was a Trojan who was a shepherd. Zeus pulled him out of the field and threw him into the middle of a god's banquet because Chaos, another god, had thrown an apple onto a table between Aphrodite, Artemis, and Athena. And the apple was golden and it said, "To the most beautiful of them all." And the three deities reached for this apple and they looked to Zeus to say, "Who's the most beautiful?" And Zeus was like, "Paris, you decide." So the judgment of Paris was each of these three deities trying to make Paris decide that she was the most beautiful. And I say she here deliberately because the Greeks, like many other patriarchal cultures, had a certain set of beliefs about women, and this story is definitely part of that. But Paris had to decide, and Athena promised him to be the best warrior ever, and Artemis promised him to be the most skilled hunter, and Aphrodite promised him Helen of Troy, Helen of Sparta at the time, and he chose her and believed that Helen belonged, in air quotes, to him. So the question of did Helen get abducted or did she go freely to Troy is one that has a history of questions behind it, but that judgment of Paris started the Trojan War. The Greeks wanted to get to Troy because it was a very rich and very strategically located place. So there were a lot of reasons to go to war, and all the different Greek islands sent their kings to get Helen back. That's a different story, but that's what started the Trojan War. It lasted 10 years. Heroes like Achilles and Hector. Achilles was Greek, Hector was Trojan, and the stories of how they fought and died for their side of the war are the epics of the Iliad, which is the prequel to the Odyssey. Once the war was over, a lot of people were dead. Some people were killed once they got home, and those stories are also interesting. Agamemnon was the leader of the kings who went over to Troy to get Helen back. Agamemnon was the brother of Menelaus, who was married to Helen. And so you can tell just by my telling all these stories how the interconnections of the prequel even inform the Odyssey. Because you in the first four books, Telemachus, the son of Odysseus, goes to Helen and Menelaus, because she does go back with Menelaus, to ask where his father is. So if you knew what happened in the Iliad and you knew these other interconnections and you knew that Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world, is actually the daughter of Zeus, those things inform even that little snippet where Telemachus talks to Helen and Menelaus. This is a lot, I know. For this telling right now, we're going to focus a little bit more on Odysseus. And I'm giving you this picture of the Trojan horse because the way the Trojan War ended was with a trick. Odysseus decided that the Greeks would give the Trojans a beautiful gift, say, we're leaving. All the ships went out of the harbor, and they left this beautiful horse for the Trojans, because the Trojans worshipped horses. And inside the Trojan horse were the Greeks. The Trojans brought them in. They were celebrating that the war was over, and that night the Greeks came out of their quote-unquote gift and sacked Troy, killed all the men, raped the women, got everybody as slaves and brought them back to Greece, took the gold, burned the city, and that was the end of Troy in that iteration. As you've seen from some of the other material I've given you, there are many iterations of Troy, and I think Troy 7 is the one about which the Iliad was written. One of the defining characteristics of the Odyssey. An Odyssey means a journey or an adventure. One of the hallmarks of that is the hero's journey. And the picture here on the right shows the steps to the hero's journey. Odysseus, the hero, the protagonist, is called to action. And that's in the first part of the circle, if we'll call it from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock. He separates from the world that he knows and goes off on an adventure, and his adventure was the Trojan War. Once the Trojan War is over, he goes into the part of the circle from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock, where he finds challenges and trials, and some of those things are being abducted by a nymph and other things that cause him to have more and more of an adventure. Eventually, the hero will ascend into death. And in the hero's journey of old, that was a literally going into death. And you'll see that Odysseus actually floats down the river Styx, goes into Hades, and meets people who are dead there. He sees his dead mother. He sees Agamemnon, who's recently been killed by his wife for a number of things, including the killing of their daughter, in order to get a fair wind to get the ships over to Troy to start the war. Agamemnon was not a nice guy, told his wife, "Oh, our youngest daughter is off on a vacation." Clytemnestra, his wife, eventually figured it out, and when Agamemnon got back from the war, she killed him. But that's another story for another time. When Odysseus goes in to the underworld to talk to a blind seer to get information, he's literally in the underworld, and the people that he's interacting with are dead. He manages to get out of that. And the thing about a journey, a mythic journey, is that you might not survive it, and he barely survives getting out of death. And that third threshold from 9 o'clock to 12 o'clock on the circle is his journey home. And this hero's journey is told over and over and over again. I will include a link to a Budweiser commercial where there's a little puppy and a horse. And it is the same hero's journey as is described here, where the little puppy and the horse are friends. The horse leaves, the little puppy follows the horse and gets lost, meets death in the form of a wolf, and finally the horse and all of the horse's friends come and save the puppy, who is seen leading the horse brigade back to the human who is wondering where the puppy is. That 1 minute hero's journey follows this circle. Like I said, I will link it in this presentation for you. What I'd like you to do is to be aware, as you're reading through the Odyssey, of the call to adventure, the trials, the mentors and patrons, and the return home, which is what Odysseus is trying to do now. And by now, I mean as the story unfolds, as we see Athena begging Zeus to let Odysseus get out of the hands of Calypso and start back home, because Penelope needs him. Themes to be aware of as you're reading the Odyssey, in addition to the hero's journey and the pattern that Odysseus has arguably created, the theme of homecoming. Odysseus, who keeps crying for his homeland, Ithaca. His perseverance, despite all the obstacles in his path, despite the loss of all of his men who disobey him and get killed. Loyalty is another theme. Penelope's fidelity, despite Odysseus's lack of fidelity, is what makes her special in the eyes of the Greeks. And Telemachus is looking for his father and needing his father. All of these are part and parcel of the themes in the Odyssey. Odysseus' relationship with the gods, the good relationship with Athena, the horrible relationship with Poseidon, who keeps trying to kill him because he blinded Poseidon's son, the Cyclops. Keep watching the interactions between deities and humans, and know that the deities, while Athena loves or appears to love Odysseus, she doesn't love him the way humans love each other. And most of the time, the deities are playing chess and using the humans as the chess pieces. So that's a sort of dispassionate thing that the gods do for their entertainment. Just be aware of that in the back of your mind. Also be aware of the fact that Odysseus uses disguises because he is a trickster. And the disguises that he uses help him a lot of the times, but every once in a while they backfire. When he gets to his home, he has been gone for 20 years. He needs to enter in disguise, but Athena will make him eventually known to people who are important, like Telemachus, like Penelope. But Penelope will test Odysseus before allowing herself to believe that it's actually him. And that test is very interesting too. Be aware, finally, that whenever Odysseus falls asleep, the scene ends and something bad is about to happen. Usually his men are about to disobey him for some reason or other. Okay, as I said before, there are many deities to watch out for, specifically Athena, Zeus, Poseidon, but we also have Mercury, known as Hermes in Greek, showing up. Mercury is the messenger deity, and so will give messages back and forth. In this case, Hermes, the Greek version of Mercury, goes and tells Calypso that she's got to let Odysseus go. She's a good sport about it. She gives Odysseus and his men some things to help them on their way. But we also see Poseidon, which is a problem for Odysseus because he can only travel by sea. And so when he's got to get from one island to the other, he's trying to get back to his island, Ithaca, he's got to travel through Poseidon's waters. And so those types of strategies are also very interesting to note as you're reading. Note also that the beginning of the poem starts with an invocation to the muses, the deities of creativity and science. The road to Hades and the depiction of afterlife tells you a little bit about the Greeks' beliefs in death and also a little bit about their origin story. And again, this talk, I hope, will give you an indication that there are many sub-stories within the story of the Odyssey. And in modern times, we don't know them all. But I'm hoping that once we finish this reading and you watch the movie, this miniseries actually, Helen of Troy, you'll begin to see those interconnections. So in conclusion, Greek mythology provides a crucial lens through which we can appreciate the Odyssey. Its tales of gods, heroes, and challenges will enrich the understanding of reading the epic journey, and the myths continue to inspire in modern culture, literature, art, and their impact is almost unconscious to us until we start looking for them. In another class, I asked students to do a treasure hunt in New York City, going around taking pictures of the various references to the deities. If you as a class would like that as an extra credit, let me know and I can set that up. But my final slide is questions to consider as you read the Odyssey. I will be making this PowerPoint presentation available to you in addition to the video. And these are the questions that you should be thinking about as you go along. I want to reiterate the motifs and themes: loyalty, homecoming, disguises that are used by Odysseus, and the idea that whenever Odysseus falls asleep, there's a metaphor in there. He wakes up to a scene change, and I will have to correct my typo on that. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy this, and there's a quiz associated with this that will be posted